Hello, folks, and welcome to History's Devils, a podcast journey through the lives of murderers, charlatans, psychopaths, and shitheels. My name is James Crossland, and typically on History's Devils, I'm the guy steering the ship. I'm telling the story about some wretch from history who I have chosen because I've researched them, I've written about them, I have a long-standing interest, whatever it is. But on this episode, I'm handing the wheel over to someone else so that they might indulge in a topic of their choosing, namely the life and crimes of a Victorian serial killer. Not the one you're thinking about. Mr. Ripper, first name Jack, has been covered on a previous episode of History's Devils. So instead today, what we're talking about is a killer who A, predated Jack the Ripper by a couple of decades, B, seems to have killed more people, C, has a confirmed identity, very novel, and D, left a legacy that, as my guest will explain, to this day affects insurance laws in the United Kingdom, which is quite interesting. She was Britain's first female serial killer, the Black Widow, the Angel of Death, the Bishop Auckland poisoner, the lady who liked arsenic a little too much, Mary Ann Cotton. And taking us on this ride through her life of poisoning mayhem, I am joined by the host of the splendid History Rage podcast, Paul Bavill. Paul, welcome to History's Devils.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
So, Miss Mary Ann Cotton, Britain's first serial killer. She lives in the long shadow of Jack the Ripper. What sparked your interest in her? Where'd you first come across her?
I actually first came across her, of all places, the British Newspaper Archives email newsletter. Oh. And I hadn't really heard of her. Which is surprising considering that I come from the north of England where all of this goes on. But I hadn't heard of her, but they have this like headlines in history, and one of them was covering the trial. And yeah, it was like Britain's first serial killer. And I thought, I got into a history rage of my own because it's like, why does everybody bang on about Jack the Ripper when, as you say in the intro, first of all, female serial killer. Secondly, way more than double, nearly triple the victims of Jack the Ripper. We actually know who she is. Justice has been done. And there is no legacy of Jack the Ripper. All these people that keep going, we have to find out who it is for the victims. Like, screw that.
There's a lot of walking tours in Whitechapel.
Yeah, that we could very much do without. But, that is it. That's the legacy of Jack the Ripper. Whereas we're actually still living, at least in part, with the impact of Mary Ann Cotton and various other Victorian poisoners.
Yeah.
I'm particularly kind of into Victorian poisonings as well, because I live near Bradford, which is which of course is the town of the great Victorian sweet poisoning scandal.
I see. So there's a sort of regional aspect to this that ties in where poisoning in the north, and you're just drawn to it.
Yeah. I mean, it goes on in other places as well. And who doesn't love a Victorian poisoner?
It goes hand in glove with lead. So I'll just do a brief rundown of who Mary Ann Cotton was, and I'll pass it over to you. But basically, the time and place in which she came of age, I think, is kind of interesting. She's born in 1832, the year of the Reform Act, kind of interesting, in Lone Morsley in Durham. I guess working class background, you'd call it?
Very, yeah.
Yeah. Methodists, pretty strict upbringing, I would imagine, in that environment, it being Methodist. In many ways, her upbringing is the picture of a sort of nascent Victorian industrialization. Her family moves to when she's quite young, moves to a town called Merton, which is expanding at the time from a small village into a coal mining town, goes from 50 odd people to over 1,000 in the course of a few years. So she's growing up into this changing England that's changing societally, economically, the landscape's changing. And like all good Victorian working class upbringings, there's a good dose of misery and tragedy because her father, Michael, falls to his death down a mine shaft. And it's a fun, grim Victorian story that his body is delivered to the house by employees of the mining company. They've stuffed him into a sack emblazoned with the company logo. And it's like some sort of dystopian corporatism. He's kind of wrapped up like some, capitalist symbolic mummy. And they just kind of leave him at the door and say, have at it, basically. That's got to have some impact on her, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult to find anything actually on her childhood that talks about what Mary Ann Roberts, as she was then, is actually thinking, feeling, and so forth. You know, most of what we get is that she's a particularly good student.
Yeah.
And it's not so much, I think, that she changes when this happens, but it's just the nature of their life completely changes. Completely changes. I mean, she was actually getting a pretty good education. We've got Sunday school reports of her that describe her as being well turned out, pleasant young lady of average intelligence. You know, she was, I wouldn't say that she was going to be, you know, the next Duchess of Devonshire, but she was certainly on a track to be able to kind of like leave the typical industrial poverty behind.
Which seems to have been her ambition, doesn't it? Like this is a recurring theme in the stuff I've read, is that there's always this thing of, she seems from the youngest age to kind of want to get out of the coal fields and do something with her life. What that is, I'm not sure, but she ends up becoming a nurse. But how does one become? Do you just fall into nursing at this time? How does this happen?
You can just go and train as it. You don't need any qualifications to be a nurse. And in fact, qualifications for being a nurse are actually a relatively recent thing, the very 21st century thing, because prior to that, you didn't really need a degree to be a nurse, which you now do. And it had always been one of those get out occupations is probably the wrong word, but it was one of those occupations that young working class girls could get the hell out.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, this came more and more in the Victorian period, where they actually started training people to be nurses in the infirmaries and workhouse hospitals and things like that. Because prior to that, your nurses in a workhouse infirmary were inmates themselves. And because what's more bizarre than Victorian healthcare?
I was going to say it's delightfully Victorian right there.
Yeah, and you see a lot of like workhouse reports that are complaining that all their nurses are completely pissed out of their minds. And so there's a reform that actually kind of like starts the workhouse health programs, and she does exactly that. So she starts. She can't be a nurse at the age of 10. You know, so she actually around about the age of 12 goes into domestic service.
Yeah.
And from what we gather, doesn't have that bad a time in domestic service either. But it's at the age of 16 when she can go and become a nurse. Then she leaves, she goes off, she trains as a nurse and starts working in Sunderland Infirmary, place that she'll visit quite a lot.
So far, so normal, really. You know, dad dies, I guess Victorian age that happens, but otherwise this is a pretty normal upbringing, pretty normal transition from childhood to adolescence. There's nothing about her pulling legs off spiders or trying to set fire to ants with a magnifying glass or anything. There's none of these, oh, this person's going to grow up to be a serial killer red flags. And then we get murders. And then we get murders.
don't we just with all of them, though? You know, it's like, I often say that when I finally leave work, it's going to be in a police interview with all my neighbours where they go, who is actually quite quiet and just a bit of a podcaster, and then this came out of nowhere.
Well, again, that could be what we're dealing with here, because she does seem incredibly, well, mundane, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
But
she is.
It's a slow creep, though, because, well, there is something about her, and well, maybe this is a place to start in terms of who it is that she ends up killing, because it's people who are close to her, and it's a lot of husbands. She does rack up quite a few partners. So let's just break this down a little bit. When does she start killing people? We think.
We think, and this is very difficult to prove. And again, this comes down to the way that Victorian law works. Because for historians, the abolition of the death penalty was the single greatest thing that could ever happen for criminal historians. Because now you will get convicted of like 9 murders and get 9 consecutive life sentences, and there will be trial records for each one. the Victorian period, when you've still got the death penalty, you literally need to convict for one willful murder, and that is it. There is no point going into all of the others. So we don't have a huge amount of records about exactly kind of who she murdered. Some of them may have actually died of natural causes, but I think your suspicions will start to grow as we go through this timeline of death.
Well, let's work on a timeline, because organizing this bereft of a chronology is going to, quite frankly, make my head explode. So, if there's a chronology, let's go with that. So when does this story of her descent into poisoning people, when does this begin? What's the year?
Okay, so you're probably best starting with 1852 is our start point. We don't know. For those reasons, we don't know exactly when her first murder was committed, but the smart money is on husband number one, William Mowbray. Now, William Mowbray was a labourer. He was a stoker and fireman aboard ships. He could disappear off for long periods of time, but it was pretty well-paid work. It's up there with being a miner. Yeah, it's not you're not going to be affording like charwomen and ladies' maids, but you're getting out of that whole kind of everybody in your family has to be a miner kind of community.
Yeah,
so she's doing pretty well in there. Again, we don't know how many children that they actually have. We only know of 3. On account of what happened to them, but there were plenty of other infant deaths going on at the time, both in her family and beyond. So there are cases of early deaths, but we don't know anything about them because they weren't registered. And although at this time, well, certainly up until about, I think it's 1856, before the law comes in, where it is a legal requirement to register both births and deaths. Okay. But the trouble is that law's not actually enforced until 1 year after Mary Ann Cotton is hanged.
You can imagine.
So who's going to know?
These things take time.
Yeah. And of course, bear in mind as well that death certificates are not at the time issued by registrars. They're issued by doctors.
Okay.
So all you need to do is go to a doctor, confirm the death. There you go. You've got a death certificate. You don't actually need to tell anybody else.
Yeah. But we're thinking William Mowbray is the first, even though his death is ruled, and we're going to come across this term a bit, natural causes.
Yes, aren't we?
Is it like typhus or gastric fever or some kind of good old-fashioned Victorian wasting disease or something that gets
what we've actually got is intestinal disorders. But let me come to that, because basically they marry in 1852 and things all look kind of rosy. But the trouble is that he falls down a hatch on a ship.
It's people falling down things again.
Yeah. Victorian industry is a pretty dangerous place.
Yeah, lots of things to fall off.
Very sensibly, there is life insurance involved. There is life insurance on him. There is life insurance on all the children. There is actually life insurance on Mary herself.
Okay.
Very sensible thing to do when you bear in mind. And I think this really stems from seeing what happened to her family when her father died, which completely ruined her education. So I was like, no, that's not going to happen. So William is insured for the sum of £35, which is equivalent to 6 months of his wages.
Yeah, it's a decent amount.
It's a decent amount for 1852. And things go pretty well for like the first sort of 10 years of that marriage. There are a few infant deaths and things like that. But then he falls down this shaft, falls down this open hatch, and the absolute worst outcome occurs. He survives. And this is a real bit. When I was selling like life and critical illness insurance, I always used to use that line. It's like, you may think that the worst thing that can happen is that your partner dies. It's like, no, the worst thing that can happen is that they survive and you're still stuck with that mortgage. And so he can't work again. He's now disabled, and they are basically living off parish money and poor relief at a start, which is not really where Mary Ann wants to be. Now, at this stage, I'm not entirely thinking that she is about to descend into a career of serial killing in exchange for money. But 1864, their son, John Robert Mowbray, dies of an intestinal disorder.
Also insured.
Also insured. Not insured for £35, insured for about £5, 10 shillings. Still not bad. Still not bad.
For a nipper, I guess.
Yeah. But she is looking out there at a life that is effectively going to be poverty and poor relief. And she's not really got the option of just ditching and moving on. So you're going to have to do something. And then mysteriously, or not, depending on how you're looking at this, January 1865, William dies of an intestinal disorder. Now, you will find that this is a young woman that does not cope with being single particularly well.
No, she works fast.
Yeah. I counted, and there is rarely more than 9 months between husbands.
Wow. So it's about 6 months, isn't it, between the first one and the second one? So it's I remember it being very short. She just kind of racks them up.
It's actually from death of William Mowbray to marriage of George Ward is a stunning 8 months.
Wow. Restraint.
Yeah. Now, at this point, she's still got 2 children. Mm-hmm. Okay. She then moves off to Seaham Harbour in County Durham. And this is where the nurse training comes in. Okay. Because she now needs a job. She doesn't have a husband who can support her anymore. In fact, probably for the last 3 months, she hasn't had a husband that could support her. But he's now out of the way. She's got 35 quid in insurance money, which is going to support her for the next 6 months. So 6 months, so that she's going to need to find a new husband and a job in the meantime. So she does, going back to her old place of Sunderland Infirmary. And in Sunderland Infirmary, and I'm very much kind of truncating this story, but in Sunderland Infirmary is a patient who is recovering from typhus fever called George Ward. And those two get together. We don't really know how they get together. A pattern will develop.
Right.
But we don't really know how they get together, but we do know that they do. And she gets married 28th of August, 1865, after he is discharged from Sunderland Infirmary back into the world. Now, typhus fever is pretty debilitating.
Yeah.
And while he's recovered from typhus fever, he's never really recovered to the point where he's going to be able to work.
Okay.
Now, this is the moment, I think, where Marianne Ward, as she is at the moment, has that idea of, do you know what? 35 quid richer last time.
This one's halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah. And they don't really have, they don't really have any children or anything like that. I mean, as marriages go, it's not bad. It lasts for 15 months in total, which I think she's shown some sterling character there of effectively putting up with poor and parish relief kind of during that time.
And he's presumably quite sickly at this time as well, because, as you say, he's been discharged, but that doesn't mean he's fully healthy.
Yeah, not fully healthy at all. And so he dies 20th of October, 1866.
Natural causes?
Intestinal problems linked to typhus.
Okay.
Now, we actually have his death certificate. So we can see that. And that is exactly what is written on this. Intestinal disorders as a result of typhus. He was insured. That's another £35 in the bank, another 6 months. And away she goes. So the next one is the really puzzling one. And this is, you just want to grab hold of her at some point and go, do you know what the hell are you doing? Just what the hell are you doing? Because literally a month goes and she's taken on as a housekeeper Housekeeper to who will become husband number 3, James Robinson.
So switching profession from nurse to housekeeper, is that more lucrative, or what is this?
I think it's just what's there at the time, because you can't just walk to Sunderland Infirmary and go, I'm going to be a nurse. You know, there's a whole issue of like vacancies and things like that. And when you bear in mind as well, there's so many working class girls going, I'm going to be a nurse. Yeah. We don't have a nurse shortage in Victorian England. We really don't.
How novel.
I know. So what she's done is she's gone back to her experience of domestic service, because she knows how to run a house. You know, she knows how to run a reasonable house, and she's seen how people run like house staff and that sort of thing. So again, that education, the fact that she's quite bright, you know, she's built experience. But yes, she's taken on as housekeeper to well-to-do and recently widowed shipwright James Robinson.
Recently widowed.
Yeah. Now, here's where a pattern starts to develop, really, because what you find is that all of her future husbands pretty much got clinical depression. Because
he's recently widowed, so presumably his brain is jelly.
He's a bit cheesed off with the whole thing. I would say. He's also lost 2 children as well, which is another thing, which is just sending him there. So as housekeeper and kind of part-time nurse and carer and so forth, he's in a prime mental state to accept exactly the sort of solace that Mary Ann feels that she can deliver at this point. I will leave that to your own kind of imagination. Doesn't really take long before she's pregnant. Yep. Now, we have an element of confusion here, because partway through husband number 2 and into husband number 3, she has also started an affair with a minor called Joseph Nattrass.
Oh, good grief.
This guy is going to keep recurring and recurring and recurring. I'm fairly certain that a lot of her children are actually his children that she's passed off as the latest husband's child.
I see.
She seems to like a lot of sex.
Just curious about that, because presumably if the insurance, looking at it from the insurance scam point of view, if it's just a lover, you can't insure them, right? If he dies, she won't get anything out of him.
At this stage, you can pretty much insure anybody for anything. Okay. Insurance is really new. And they've done that Victorian upper class thing of assumed that everybody will just abide by the rules.
How quaint.
Yes. It's like, the insurance industry has learned a lot since then.
Yes, yeah, they've become wily.
Yeah, this again is one of the other reasons why you can't insure children, where you can't insure children for as much, is just it more comes down to just the risk. You know, if you've got a lot of infant mortality, you start insuring 9-year-old, you start insuring 1-year-old and a 3-year-old and a 9-year-old, then you're going to be basically covering the funeral costs of the infants. But that's about it. But
in theory, husbands are not meant to drop like flies in this period.
Ideally, no. And even today, you can insure your spouse for an unlimited sum.
Jeez.
I don't let the delightful Lady Rage know this. Not least because she studied as many Victorian poisoners as I have. But yeah, so we've got this kind of love triangle going on with Joseph Nattrass and with James Robinson, which is a bit of a stupid thing to do, because James Robinson is like proper wealthy. I mean, we are talking middle class, shipwright. This is a guy that can afford a housekeeper.
Yeah. She could have made it with this one.
Absolutely. If she'd have just behaved herself, you know, then there wouldn't have been any need for this shit at all.
Yeah. But she can't help herself, can she?
No, she can't. No. She can't. But very quickly into meeting this, she is pregnant again. We're not entirely sure whose. James Robinson is fairly convinced it's his, because he's absolutely unaware that anything else is going on. Mm-hmm. But with her being pregnant, she's going to have to get married. Trouble is, there is something standing in the way of the marriage. At that point, Mary Ann's mother becomes ill with hepatitis. and she's basically called back to her home village to nurse her mother. Now, we've got a bit of a ticking clock here because having a child outside of wedlock is not going to be a good thing. She needs to get married before that birth happens. She's about 3 months in at this point, and now she's looking at a long-term caring stay for her mother with hepatitis. So something's got to give. Now, her mother is actually well on the road to recovery by the time that Mary Ann gets there.
I don't like where this is going.
You don't like. You are right to not like where this is going because
it doesn't sound good.
It does not sound good at all. Because having recovered from hepatitis 9 days after Mary arrives, her mother dies of
intestinal
gastric fever. So
gastric
you're close.
Fever.
Gastric fever.
Yes. God damn it.
Now, this is one of the areas where I don't know. I don't know. It's because the Victorians didn't investigate this in graphic detail. Then we don't know actually whether that was gastric fever. Because when Mary Ann returns after that to the Robinson household, there is also 2 of Robinson's existing children from his first marriage, and her own eldest daughter, Isabella, all die of gastric fever. Now, it's contagious, so this is not beyond the realms of possibility. You can see why.
Is there some sort of epidemic of this happening at this time, or is this just something that is everywhere at this time?
I mean,
because people are just eating food with shit on it.
Well, certainly in terms of her mother, the doctor that wrote the death certificate was actually quite surprised. He actually stated that he was surprised that she died so quickly, which is what leads me to suspect and add the mother to the poison list.
But why would she is she killing the mother out of spite? You know, you road blocking you dragged me all the way up here. I was about to get married to this wealthy guy. You pissed me off. I'm killing you. Is that it, or is it just to be rid of her?
I read it as this ticking clock that she's got to get back to sort this marriage out.
Yeah,
but she can't do this. But if the mother's not there,
no reason to be up there.
Is going to die of something. Let's be honest, gastrointestinal related.
Yeah.
Then out of the way that she goes. She wasn't insured, but Mary Ann's eldest daughter, Isabella, was. She collected £5, 10 shillings and sixpence for that one.
Not bad.
With the loss of the 2 children, the depression just steaks further into James Robinson, and they end up getting married. Finally.
Damn fool.
I know. We say he's actually the smart guy. They have their first child is born in November, but actually dies an infant death. Now, I don't suspect Mary Ann of that at all, probably because you couldn't get that insured.
Yeah.
They have a second child born June 1869. That is George. Again, things have gone now. Things could be good for her. And this is where I just want to kind of grab hold of her and go, what the hell are you doing? Because she starts nagging Robinson to get life insurance. And she is constant about this. Constant and repeated. And for both him and the children.
Subtle.
Yeah. To the point where he starts to get suspicious that she's on the take and is just interested in money.
Yeah, he's not an idiot then.
He's not an idiot
he gets what
at
this
all,
is.
Right.
He's
got so he basically has him and his accountant really go through the accounts quite thoroughly of the entire family. And what he finds is that Mary Ann has actually built up debts of £60 and has stolen £50 from him. She has pawned his first wife's wedding ring.
Oh, that's a bad move.
Quite a few other things of sentimental value. And she's been basically forcing the children to go and pawn things as well. And he's like, enough. What the hell?
Did she force the children to go pawn their dead mother's wedding ring?
I don't think the wedding ring was on the children.
Because that would have been
but it's
next
like,
level.
It's like items
gross.
of lace and things like that. I mean, yeah. There's a place we can go.
It's still bad, but I just, that would have been perfect.
Yeah. I told you I was coming on with somebody despicable and an absolute shitheel. Yeah.
And it's not just poisoning. Like, there's myriad other crimes in here. This is fantastic.
Yeah. And he's like, at this point, Robinson's just enough. And he throws her out very sensibly, keeps custody of George. So she's now homeless. So she goes back home.
And insurance policy-less.
Yes, insurance policy-less, because she hadn't taken it out on any of them.
Yeah.
So she ends up now homeless, goes back to her home village again, moves in with a childhood friend, Margaret Cotton. Now we're getting to the final surname that we can track this woman on. Yeah. And Margaret Cotton is basically nursing her incredibly depressed brother, who was recently widowed and lost 2 children. Are we seeing a pattern here?
Just a bit.
Yeah. So he's very depressed. He's not really going to be going anywhere. Not going to be doing much. But she can move in there, and she's got a home. And he's got 2 remaining children already. And there's a chance for another marriage here. Now, you say that she's racking up the crimes because we've got racking up with poisonings, and we've also got thefts, and we've got frauds. Why not add bigamy into that as well?
Of course, because they never got divorced.
Yes, bingo. But before we're going to dive into bigamy, we're going to go back to that old favourite, murder.
Okay.
So, standing in the way of the marriage to Fred Cotton is, of course, his sister and Mary Ann's childhood friend, Margaret Cotton.
Oh, man.
Yeah, she's got to go. She's just got to go. And late March 1870, Margaret does go of gastric flu.
Can't she change it up and like have him trampled by a horse or something just to...
There is method in this.
And this is her old friend. This is like a childhood friend.
This is a childhood friend. I mean, to be fair, she would have done off with her own mother.
I suppose. I mean, yeah, there's clearly no depths, but this is she's hidden everyone. Recent acquaintances, people who've been with her her whole life.
Yeah.
Great.
Late March, so Margaret dies. Mary Ann becomes 2 things. Number 1, carer for Fred. Number 2, pregnant.
She's on form.
This one, we know this pregnancy is Fred's because right now, Joseph Nattrass is married to somebody else and he's not doing any, he's just not getting involved.
We're sure of that? We're sure of that?
We're
He's
sure
an honourable man?
We are sure of this. Okay? He doesn't piss about those while he is married. But again, Fred's not going to be working anytime soon. She's going to be back on parish relief, poor money. That's not going to happen. So what was, and this is the thing, it's like, depression is not going to get taken seriously as a mental illness in the Victorian period.
No.
Okay. They've not got the money to be checking themselves into kind of asylums and things like that and keep that going. She's got to be looking at Fred Cotton as somebody who is absolutely not going to be able to take her out of poverty at all while he's alive. This one, I think, is absolutely premeditated. Right from the word go. I think she moves in with him with the express idea of killing him.
You don't think the others were the same? You think that even the shipwright, yeah, I can get that, but the fellas before, you don't think she was the second one even?
I think George Ward was a bit of kind of opportunity because, again, he had a job.
Yeah. Potential
to have a job. He just couldn't keep it.
Yeah.
And so he would be in, out of work. It was, and I think the murder of George Ward was definitely premeditated, but I don't think she actually married him with a view to killing him for the insurance money.
Okay.
I think she marries Fred Cotton exactly to kill him for the
She looked at him and she just sees
insurance.
£35, basically.
I mean, it's more than he's going to earn. So she marries him in September 1870. They have a son. was born early 1871. Late 1871, who's back on the scene? Joseph Nattrass, recently widowed. She does like a recently widowed.
Did anything sus there? Is he doing murders now?
Not quite yet, but I'm fairly certain that he's completely oblivious to this. I mean, I don't think Joseph Nattrass is dumb, but I don't also think that he is the sharpest tool that has been dealt with at this stage. But Fred Cotton dies 1871 of a gastrointestinal complication.
Of course he does.
And this is where you're going to swing the words, Joseph Nattrass, what the hell are you doing? Because Nattrass then kind of rekindles this affair and moves in with her as a lodger.
He's not aware of this trail of death and destruction behind her?
I'll probably come to this when we get into the how the hell did she get away with it kind of section. But I have to say that I mean, we're 1872 here, so she's 39. We've got a 39-year-old woman who has been widowed 3 times. And it's like, I would be starting to ask questions.
As well as dead mother, friends, children.
And so forth, yeah. I'd be starting to ask questions. Nattrass does have one thing going in his favour, which is he's not going to marry her.
Okay.
It's a defence mechanism, I will grant you, but it's not a very good one, because what he does is instead of marrying her, what he does is he amends his will into her benefit, which pretty much signs his death warrant, because he dies. Well, the son dies in March 1872, along with one of Fred Cotton's surviving sons, Fred Jr. Okay. Nattrass doesn't marry her, but gets the will amended. And then about a month later, he dies of...
defenestration.
Gastric fever. Yeah. So let's just recap for a moment here. She's at least got rid of 3 husbands, 1 lover, 1 childhood friend, God knows how many children, and 1 lover. There's a lot going on.
Yeah, the children we can't count. There's confusing.
There's just so many.
Because child mortality is so rampant, it's really hard to tell.
You know, and one of the ways that we're finding out about births that are not registered and things like that is a census, which only happens once every 10 years and only takes the people that are alive then.
Yeah. Not really helpful. Yeah.
So, yeah, fortunately for Marianne, Fred Jr. and their infant son Robert were all insured.
Thank God. I was worried about her for a second.
Yeah, I know. So finally, she's then takes employment as a nurse to a customs and excise officer who is recovering from smallpox. Now, if you try and search records for this guy, according to things that were said in the trial and stuff like that, there's a guy called John Quick Manning. We can't actually find much record of John Quick Manning.
Okay.
We can find a Richard Quickman. Maybe. We don't know. What we do know is that whoever this guy is, he is the father of Mary's 13th child. Okay. Who is going on to be born. It's a girl, and she's referred to, and you can actually find records of her as being Margaret Quick Manning. Now, the trouble is that he eventually gets tired of sleeping with his housekeeper and nurse, so he basically just bins her off, which has probably saved his life. And also, he kept the daughter. She didn't particularly want the daughter, so that was fine. That probably saved Margaret Quick Manning's life. Mm-hmm. But she still has to wander off with Charles Cotton, because John or Richard Quick Manning is not going to be dealing with the younger son of Fred Cotton. So she's still got this one in tow, and this is where the house of cards is about to collapse.
Okay.
She is offered a job nursing another woman who was recovering from smallpox, or she was actually ill with smallpox at the time. And she couldn't go into that house with 5-year-old Charles Cotton because the risk to his health was too great. So she's having to decline this job, which is therefore seeing
he is a roadblock.
Yeah, he is a roadblock to the money. Mm-hmm. He is insured. 5-year-old Charles Cotton. So she goes to the parish kind of official, a guy called Thomas Riley, and asks if Charles Cotton can be taken into the workhouse. And Riley says, no, he's not an orphan. So the only way he's going into the workhouse is if you go with him.
Which is not going to happen.
And then she says this line, and I've got the quote. I won't be troubled with him long. He'll go like all the rest of the Cottons.
That is not a criminal genius speaking right there.
No,
saying that
we are not talking. Yeah. We are not talking Moriarty here.
No.
The truth is, Thomas Riley is not only like the parish official that is dealing with workhouse admissions and that sort of thing. He's also the West Auckland District Assistant Coroner. Okay. Bad choice to make that. 5 days after she says this, the boy's dead.
And this triggers a memory in his head about, that
doesn't
boy
it
that
just
came to talk about.
Not only does it trigger that memory in his head, but rather than the first place that she's going to, being the doctor, is the first place that she's going is the offices of the Prudential Life Insurance Company. And now they tell her that they're not paying anything out without a death certificate, so she's got to try and then get the death certificate from the doctor. But Riley beats her to it.
Yeah.
And he basically begs the doctor to not issue a death certificate.
Because he knows there's something up.
He knows there's something up. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've all died in the same way, and she's essentially pre-declared it. Doctor in question's actually quite prepared to certify this death as being gastric flu. Riley just begs in a way that no Victorian gentleman should. But he gets his way, and they perform what's known as the Reinsch test, which is one of the tests that you can use for arsenic in the body. There's the Marsh test as well, but this is the Reinsch test that's used, and this shows up arsenic. Not just arsenic, quite a lot of arsenic.
Okay, well, I was going to ask about that because it's worth stepping back a bit here and just sort of thinking about where we are and how she's come this far. You know, she is this runaway train of death that no one has seemed to have paid much attention to. We've noted the pattern of gastric illness, gastric flu, gastric whatever. That gastric fever that is acute in all these cases. And arsenic is the thing that she's when it goes to trial, they look at it and go, yeah, it's arsenic poisoning based on these tests. But here's the thing about arsenic is that it's everywhere at this time, right? This is I mean, it's in soap, it's in cleaning products, it's in the fucking wallpaper of some people's houses.
I tell you the one place it usually isn't. Your stomach.
Okay.
And that's what the Reich test is doing. It is testing stomach linings.
I see.
And so you find quite a lot of arsenic in there. So the doctor then certifies that child as having died of arsenic poisoning. They then go to exhume Joseph Nattrass, Fred Cotton, and Fred Cotton Jr. and find them all to have died from arsenic poisoning as well. And that's where she's then arrested.
Yeah.
Cut to a trial. It takes a jury 90 minutes to convict her.
Shit.
She's judge wasted absolutely no time in passing a death sentence. And she is hanged, I forget the date, but she's hanged in Durham Jail, and if you do want to have a go and wander around the grounds of Durham Jail, she is under there still.
I got the date here. It's the 24th of March, 1873.
That's it. And yeah, she was 40 years old.
And yeah, after a very brief trial, and something interesting about the trial, I did some reading up on the trial and just the newspaper reportage around it. I mean, they already kind of damn her in the newspapers beforehand. She's referred to as a wretched woman, the poisoner of West Auckland, this sort of thing. It's all kind of there already. Her performance of the trial is interesting because she is nursing someone's baby, Christ knows whose, but I'm not sure.
I think that is Margaret Quick Manning that is born in prison.
That one. Oh, right, born in prison. So she's kind of presenting herself as this eternal figure in the dock, nursing this kid, and that actually makes it in the press. Obviously, doesn't help her case, but it is interesting. It's Harvey Weinstein turning up with his Zimmer frame. It's that sort of thing, I think, where it's like, please pity me. Doesn't work for her. She writes letters, doesn't she? Like, she protests her innocence quite vigorously and writes letters begging for clemency. But at the same time, you get this sense she kind of feels like she might get away with it. It's weird. I can't quite read her behavior in the trial at all.
She's convinced she's going to get royal clemency. She's convinced, as single mother of that baby, that basically the Queen is going to intervene. Apparently, this happens.
Okay.
But she's absolutely convinced that this is going to get commuted or something like that. And yeah, she's writing an awful lot of letters to an awful lot of people, all of which have very different tones. I've read a few of them because they've got some of them at Beamish Museum.
Yeah.
Along with, scarily, one of her teapots, which I'm going nowhere near, thank you.
Well, so this is the thing, just to speak on that. So the prevailing theory is that she's poisoning these people with tea. And that's because arsenic, you can't dissolve that in cold water. It needs to be dissolved in hot water. So tea would make the most viable method.
Unless you're going to mix it in food. But if you're going to mix it in food, then you've got to take care that you don't poison yourself.
Yeah, much easier in tea. So they still got one of her teapots. Damn, that's cool. That's very cool.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just I am the world's biggest tea drinker. I'm going nowhere near that shit. But one of the letters that she writes has a very, and I paraphrase this slightly, but she actually writes to James Robinson, of all people, and includes the phrase, "If you had a speck of human decency, you would let me see the children." It's like, no, I bloody well wouldn't, bitch.
Why would she be asking to see the children? She can't get life insurance off them now. This isn't going to help. She hasn't got a teapot in prison. What's the?
Who knows?
Was this for? Well, let's play devil's advocate here for a sec, or devil's sympathy, whatever it is. What if this is legit? What if she is the unluckiest woman in Victorian England and death just follows her everywhere? Gastric fever, it's just everywhere. The arsenic levels that are higher because of all kinds of environmental circumstances, nothing to do with her. And at the end of the day, she is this woman on trial who is innocent. She's despairing and she's nursing the child. And she says, you know what? What about these other children? I need to see them. That's why she writes them. You convinced?
No, not remotely. No.
Thought I'd give it a shot.
The only reason I think death is following her around is because then he doesn't need to swing the scythe that far. I wouldn't book another appointment.
Because they're great mates.
Yeah, the general level of arsenic that's all over Victorian England, fine, but you've got 4 recent deaths that have all got it in their stomach, so it's ingested arsenic. That's quite hard to do.
Yeah.
Environmentally. I mean, we're not talking people who have died where their lungs are lined with arsenic, where they've inhaled it, so out of wallpaper and things like that. They've actually had to ingest this.
Yeah.
So no, I'm bang on. She is. I'm going to put her as guilty of all of them.
So let's talk a little bit, or let's wax lyrical a bit, because neither of us are psychologists. But her mental state, is she a sociopath, or is this just? You've laid out a pretty convincing case that this is circumstance and opportunism, and I'd say that it's laced with this almost, dare I say, this sort of Victorian aspirational thing of, moving up in the world by whatever means necessary. Is that what's going on here, where she just happens to fall into this circumstance with Mowbray and goes, oh yeah, 35 quid, I can get that, and then the appetite for this grows with the eating, basically. With each new husband, she gets new opportunities.
I think so. I mean, whether or not William Mowbray is murdered, who knows? We certainly don't know. The only one that we categorically know was murdered by Mary Ann Cotton was Charles Cotton.
And that's, you made this point at the start, she's only convicted for one murder.
You only need to be, there's no point sentencing somebody to 13 death sentences, is there?
Yeah.
And there's no court of appeal. We don't have a court of appeal until well into the 20th century. So once that black hat goes on in the courtroom, that's it. It's done. We don't need to do trials for the others.
Yeah. Tie the slip knot, it's done.
Yeah, exactly. But I think there is an initial 35 quid. Then I think in husband number 2, she sees where the load's going, but knows that there's a route out there. I don't actually think she was planning on killing James Robinson, but was probably going to be offering a few of the children to deal with those debts.
In the hopes he wouldn't notice.
Yeah. I mean, again, we're pre-Married Women's Property Act here.
Yeah.
So if she kills Robinson, she's not going to inherit the shipwright business and things like that.
Yeah, he's more valuable alive, isn't he?
Yeah. However, I hate to say this, but the children are eminently disposable.
And spoken like a true Victorian.
Yes, exactly. And then Fred Cotton, I think, was right from the start.
Yeah. She pegged him.
That she was going to kill him.
So she's not killing for fun. She's killing for profit. That seems to be the thing. Opportunistic in many ways, targeting at some times. In terms of how this affects insurance laws, like specifically, what does this lead to in terms of where we are now?
So what this does is it shines a light on the burial clubs. And there is... Oh God, I mean, it takes forever for this actually to become a thing. But this is kind of one of those moments of moral outrage that spark everybody to start looking at this, because in the profit you can make from insurance is the motive for this. So it's absolutely categorically is the motive for all of these murders. So the insurance companies start then to look at things like insurable interest and so forth. There is whole loads of debates in Parliament which lead up to what's known as the Children's Insurance Act. Now, bearing in mind, I've got some quotes from the second reading in the Lords, which, just to give you an idea of just how slowly the legal system works, that's the 16th of June, 1890. So we are 17 years further down the line, and we still haven't actually got this outlawed yet. But
not a lot changes.
Yeah, a few of the quotes that I've got here that give you an idea of the thinking. Mr. Carter is a witness in this, the coroner for Gloucestershire, says, the longer I live, the more occasions I have to look with suspicion on deaths of young children that are insured. Insurance encourages a greater interest in their deaths than in their survival, and I shall do all I can to put it down. There's another even kind of like darker thought that comes from the Registrar General of Ireland, Thomas Grimshaw. And he says, and I quote, an extraordinary thing to be observed in connection with it was the number of children who died not having been seen by medical men and no exertion having been made to save their lives. The way in which children were allowed to die so that insurance money might be had for them was a disgrace to the whole nation.
Yeah. So it's
wraps off with at the end of one of the trials, not Mary Ann Cotton's trials, a later trial for a similar thing, the jury are of the opinion that the facilities given by the loose system of life insurance practiced by some of the companies is an incentive to willful murder for the sake of the insurance money. It's
being pretty straight up there with what it is. But as you say, it takes a while.
Even to this day, it is remarkably difficult to insure children. Life insure children. It is possible. It is possible, but most financial institutions are not going to do it. And those that do are not going to be issuing money. So you need an insurable interest in order to insure your life. So I can't insure your life because I'm not going to be financially worse off if you die.
Yeah.
You'll be pleased to know I'm not going to be financially better off if you die either, bearing in mind my knowledge of Victorian poisonings.
Good to know.
But I can insure the delightful Lady Rage for however much I like, and no insurable interest limit between spouses. I can insure myself. I could, when I was 18 and living at home, I could insure my parents.
Yeah.
But I couldn't insure the children for really anything more than funeral expenses. Wow. And the places that will insure a child's life will not give you the money. They will pay for the funeral.
Yeah, it's not really worth killing them for, is it? No,
exactly. But that's, that didn't just come around. Mary Ann Cotton shone the light into that.
It didn't get called it wasn't called the Cotton Law, the Cotton Rule?
No.
Mr. Trick.
It didn't start it off. Where I think it really kicked off was that when they found that the baby farms were insuring all of the babies that were living in there.
Yeah.
And things like that. And they were racking in some profits. And that's why I think finally puts an end to it. But without Mary Ann Cotton, none of the insurance companies would have gone looking.
So there is a silver lining here. We do get something out of it. But in terms of her, I just want to end by reflecting a little bit on her legacy and where this gets to. We talked to the top about how she gets buried under your Rippers, your Crippens, and things, people of that nature. What's behind that, do you think, considering because there are some people who doubt the numbers that she killed, and there's plenty of room for argument, because we can't decide, on the children at least, how many of them fall from her hands. Is that part of what obscures it? Is it that she's a woman? Like, what's going on here that makes her less of a household name than some of these others?
I don't think it's that she's a woman. I will definitely throw that out there, because that, in terms of like Victorian press, is quite sensational.
Yeah.
It's good. And it goes to that heart of like Victorian moral panic and fear. It's like the poisoner could be anybody.
Mm-hmm. Even the gentler sex.
Yeah.
Heaven forbid.
If I was to get my conspiracy head on, I would probably say that the insurance companies do quite a lot to make sure that this story goes away.
Excellent.
And of course, bear in mind as well that while you've got the press outrage at the actual trial and everything, there's no real kind of hunt for Mary Ann Cotton. Nobody spots this pattern.
Yeah.
It goes on all over the Capital Dome. But I actually noted down, I'm going to read you some symptoms of Victorian diseases.
Do it.
Okay. So let's start up at the top with typhus, okay, which manifests with stomach pain, vomiting, diarrhea, high temperature, and skin discoloration.
Yeah, the only thing about typhus is the skin discoloration. That's quite.
Here we go. Then we go
noticeable.
To gastric fever.
Yeah.
Stomach pain, vomiting, diarrhea, and high temperature.
Why do I feel like I'm reading the NHS website?
Cholera, another Victorian classic. Yep. Stomach cramps, vomiting, diarrhea, and thirst.
Mm-hmm.
Arsenic poisoning. Stomach pain, vomiting, diarrhea, high temperature, and skin discoloration. Almost identical to typhus. It's just a different rash.
Go. Yeah.
Now, typhus and cholera alone are responsible for a stack ton of Victorian deaths amongst children, amongst adults. It takes the Rhine's test to actually show arsenic poisoning. It's really easy to cover this death up as another typhus, typhoid fever, gastric flu death. They look identical. They happen all the time. Secondly, she can just move to a different village. She doesn't even need to, she's not going to be turning up having to prove her ID. You try and claim Social Security now, you are having to prove ID. You've got to prove your national insurance number. You're going to have proof of address. Like, look at that. You can rock up in the next town across, turn up, and claim your parish money.
None of these coroners, I mean, none of these people are talking to each other, obviously, over the time when these murders are happening, because she's able to get away with it for years. No one's going, oh, hang on a minute. This would be like, there's no central database.
No. You know, and if she's moved from Sunderland to Bishop Auckland, and has been widowed again, as far as the doctor's concerned, that's gastric flu. Nothing suspicious in that.
Yeah.
And there you go. And then even if you have to show, you know, evidence of your widowhood, you turn up with a death certificate, you're going to die of gastric flu. It's not like she's carrying a Lever Arch folder of death certificates around with her.
No. And it's also the fact that when you reflect on looking at it like that, really, she just gets sloppy at the end, doesn't she?
Yeah.
She gets sloppy, and that's her undoing. She could have kept this racket going for a while longer, I suspect.
Yeah, she was absolutely her own worst enemy. Although, you know, she was reaching the age of 40, and one starts to ask questions about how long you can keep the whole child racket going.
Yeah, that's true. But well, maybe it was inevitable in that sense that she was going to meet her end in this way at this time. It's a kind of inglorious end as well, which I think is another part of it. I mean, there's a trial. It's a quick trial. It's not some big sensational trial necessarily. It's just like, well, you know, this poisoning woman, how outrageous. They hang her, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
Other than, as you say, the insurance legacy, which is the sort of, you know, not the sort of thing that's going to pique people's curiosity. It's not the same as, you know, the great unsolved mystery of this person who went around stabbing people. It doesn't have that same cachet.
There is a hunt for Jack the Ripper. And therefore that's in that's in the press for months. Even though, let's be fair, Jack the Ripper is only active for 6 months.
Yeah.
You know, Mary Ann Cotton is active for 21 years.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Pretty goddamn impressive.
But, you know, we know who Mary Ann Cotton is, and therefore that can die down. You don't get this roller coaster of who is it, and so forth.
And takes the shine off her as well.
Yeah.
Takes the allure away.
You've got like the Crippen murder later on, you know, that's almost celebrity.
Yeah.
You know, that's the doctor that murdered his glamorous music hall wife and ran away with this secretary dressed as a boy. And that's going to keep the newspapers going forever, is that one.
So more understated, but certainly more hefty in terms of fatalities. A serial killer with as many as 20 people, let's say, ballpark figure on her hands, maybe, who knows, a lot. Whether she killed one person or north of a dozen, she is now amongst the ranks of the history's devils. Her guilt, her innocence, her sanity or lack thereof, I'll leave to the discerning views of the listener. But I think you've made a pretty good case here for what seems pretty evident as a spate of murders carried out over a long time by someone who is in it for the money. Pretty wretched. And on that, I will leave it up to those listening to pass a final judgment on Mary Ann Cotton. Maybe leave a comment if you're listening to this. What do you think about her? Also, make sure to like, subscribe, hit buttons, do all that kind of stuff. And do also listen to History Rage. Paul, what's coming up? History Rage wise, what have we got in the pipeline for the next few months? Anything you can reveal?
Coming up, what are my rages that I've got? Well, I've just recorded one with YouTuber Will Carver, Lord Hard Thrasher fame, who came on to annoy the American audience by saying that the B-17 bomber is a bit shit.
That will be fun.
I've got Izzy Meakin from the What the Austin podcast to come on and explain just how much of a bitch Jane Austen can actually be. And since as we're going into the realms of the despicable shitheels here on History's Devils, I've got episode coming out mid-June for my Patreon subscribers, at least, that will be looking at the dark legacy of Elizabeth Bathory.
Oh, she's good fun.
Yeah. Who doesn't love Tudor vampire woman?
Drinking the blood of small children to keep her life essence going.
Well, I shall be exploring the truth.
No, that's mint. Great. That sounds wonderful. Well, yes. Everyone listen to History Rage. Keep listening to History's Devils. Keep enjoying history, and we will see you next time on the show.